Hello and welcome to Hanging by a Thread. My name is Ailsa and this is my little corner of the internet where I talk about all things knitting. And Happy New Year! This is my first video of 2025. Yeah, I can't believe it. Here we are. This video is a little bit behind the schedule I had in my head. I knew that I was going to have a bit of a break because I was traveling for the holidays. So I kind of had in my head that I wasn't going to be trying to film anything or put up content when I was away for the holidays. But then my plans of like coming back in January with a bang right out of the gate kind of got messed up. I managed to pick up a stomach bug and be pretty sick for a few days. So that just messed up my entire schedule. But anyway, I'm back now and I'm really excited to be here. Today, I'm going to do a intention setting video. So talking about my goals and intentions for my knitting in this coming year. Now, I know this isn't everyone's cup of tea. Like some people hate like resolutions and goal setting and anything to do with this. If that's you, like cool, you do you. I'm somebody who really likes this process of sitting down and reflecting, like, what do I want the following year to be full of? What do I want to give my attention to in the following year? I don't always follow it or achieve it, but for me, that's less of the point. It's more about, yeah, just putting some thought into where do I really want to spend my time and energy? What do I want to find myself doing this year? What am I hoping for? And it can just give me a bit of like clarity or inspiration. So for me, that's what I like about this process. And so I thought I would just share that with you. So yeah, we'll just jump into what are my knitting goals, intentions for 2025. So I have 5 broad categories within which I have my intentions and goals for this year. So those are skills, projects, stash, other crafts, and community. So 5 broader kind of topic areas, and then within those I have some goals beneath it. So I'm going to go through each area one by one and just share what I'm thinking with you. So number 1 is skills. First up in skills, I have written down here to take more care. So the thing that I was thinking about here is I think that can be not even external pressure, like pressure I put on myself to produce more and to finish more quickly. Sometimes I kind of rush towards the end because I'm so keen on getting that finished object that, you know, maybe I don't make the item long enough, or maybe I like skimp on some things, or I don't go back and fix things even though I kind of know it's not perfect or not how I like it. So sometimes I can kind of rush towards the finish line rather than taking the care that would end up making a better finished object in the long run. So this year I would like to spend more time taking care, less time worrying about getting to the finish line. So, you know, paying real attention to the details, ripping back if I need to, and if that's going to make a better finished object, getting the length right. This is a big one for me. I often end up knitting things a little bit too short and then they become less wearable. And that's just for the sake of knitting a couple of extra inches, like that's just so silly. So that's that one, taking more care with my knitting. My second goal in the skills area is to figure out fit and modification. This is actually a goal that I had last year in 2024, but I didn't really get to it. I didn't really do anything on it. But I'm not somebody who's done a lot of modifying or changing my knits other than, you know, changing for length. And I'm a little bit intimidated by it. I think there's like a technical side to knitting, a math side to knitting that I'm not very confident with. That's not really how my brain works. And so I think I've kind of convinced myself that I can't do it, or I don't understand it, or I'm not smart enough to change up a pattern. But I know that if I could figure it out and if I put the time in, I would end up with finished objects that fit me better and that then get more wear. So I would like to kind of gain the confidence and skills to do some more modification of my knits. And sometimes like even knowing when something is going to need modification, I'm like, how do I even get to the process of knowing I'm going to need to change something in order to get a better fit? So that's a goal that I'm carrying over from last year. I'm really curious if anyone has any resources or teachers or any kind of thoughts on how I can even get started with this. It feels pretty overwhelming to me, but I would really appreciate any tips on how I might get started. So that's a big one, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to tackle it, but it is something I really want to try and find some time to look at this year. The last thing in my skills section are some specific skills I'd like to improve on. I want to do more color work. I started doing some color work this year. I did a couple of stranded knitting projects for my daughter. I started a stranded color work sweater for myself, but that one kind of went awry. I did a colorwork hat for myself. I started a colorwork cowl. So I just want to keep playing with colorwork, especially stranded colorwork. I'd like to do some mosaic knitting. So yeah, colorwork is a definite big one. Connected to that, I really am intrigued by the idea of steeking. So possibly finding a project to do a steeked colorwork project would be cool this year. I find it very intimidating, but also very intriguing. So that's something I want to maybe push myself to do. And then also I want to do more cabling. I can cable. I have done cable work projects in the past, but it's not something I've ever done a whole garment in. And it's not something I tend to gravitate towards doing. Even though I love the look of cabled projects, I tend to avoid making them. I'm not sure why, but yeah, it's something I'd like to challenge myself to maybe get a few cable projects under my belt this year. And I'm also really interested in trying to figure out how to cable without a cable needle. So that's that would be, maybe that would make me more interested in cabling. I found a really good video on Threads the other day, I think, that showed the process, and it made it look pretty easy and simple and straightforward. So maybe I will try that out at some point before too long. So yeah, a couple of goals there around some specific skills to just keep building my strength in various areas of knitting. Okay, my next area is projects. The first goal I have here is to do an assessment of all of my current whips and unfinished objects and kind of do a frog or finish assessment. Just see what's sitting on the needles and make a decision about whether I'm going to put the time in to finish it or if it's just needing to be frogged and that yarn needs to become something else. I really like watching those videos from other people. I'm curious if you all do, because if you do, maybe I'll make a video of me going through those projects. So yeah, let me know if that's something you'd like to see here on the channel. But definitely I think it'd be good to kind of, you know, pull out some of those older projects and just kind of take a look at what's there and be a little bit realistic about what I do and don't actually want to work on or want to have as a finished object. I also have a Make 9 that I put together. Maybe I'll put it up on the screen here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but one thing I'll point out about my Make 9 is that it has some things in it that relate to the goals I was talking around skills. So there's a cable cardigan on there, the book club cardigan, there's a colorwork piece, the Luma sweater, and the colorwork club cuff sock patterns from Summer Lee. So there are a few things on my Make 9. There's the pressed flowers cardigan. So yeah, there's a few things there that fit into that skill extension. I don't know that I really expect to make all 9 of these projects. For me, the Make 9 is kind of like a fun dreaming exercise, but not something I'm really holding myself to. It would be fun if I made them. If I don't, it's okay, kind of thing. So that's what I have for projects, just 2 little-ish goals there. The next big goal area is my stash. So you may have seen a few weeks ago, I put out a video about organizing my stash, and going through that process made me feel very overwhelmed, and also made it very clear to me that for my personal preferences, my yarn stash is too big currently. So from that process of organizing my stash and seeing what's there, and I put everything in Ravelry, and have that all updated now, I have decided that for at least the first 6 months of the year, I'm going to have a yarn ban. So that means buying no new yarn until at least June 30th. At that point, at June 30th, I'll reconsider and decide whether I want to continue having a yarn ban, or if I've used so much of my stash that I want to buy more in the coming rest of the year. But at least for the first 6 months, I'm saying no yarn. The only exception I will make to that is if I need to buy yarn in order to finish a project. So, you know, I've run out of the balls I need in order to complete something, then okay, I can buy yarn to finish something off. But otherwise, I'm saying no to new yarn. I wanted to pause here and say, I know that this is a really popular or common intention for the knitting community at the start of a new year. And maybe for some of you, you're kind of rolling your eyes, or you know that people often say this and then within a month they're ordering the new yarn. And I hear you. I've definitely been there before. I think last year my goal was to have a net negative. But that goal was just so, for me, it was too wishy-washy, and it was too easy to kind of be like, oh, I'm going to buy yarn, but I'll still get to the negative because I can just use more stash yarn later on. So that didn't work for me. But regardless, I know it's a very common goal to reduce stash, to buy less yarn, to get a net negative. All of these kind of commitments are very common and also often quite easily broken. For me, I'm thinking about this in a couple of different ways and giving myself motivation in a couple of different ways. The first is financial. I have transitioned recently from working part-time while I look after my daughter to just being a full-time stay-at-home parent. So my financial situation has changed. The amount of disposable income I have has changed, and I don't want to be spending more money right now. I have a big enough yarn stash to keep me knitting well through that 6 months. And so I can make that financial choice not to be spending money that I don't really have right now. The second is space. I'm running low on space to keep my yarn. So that's just a kind of obvious no-brainer. Working through my stash is going to help me reduce the space that I need for it. The third is that kind of emotional component, that it was stressing me out seeing much yarn I had and feeling that the pressure of the yarn. And everyone's different on this front. What's a lot for one person is too little for someone else, and vice versa. So you know, your mileage may vary, but for me, the amount that I have in my stash was starting to feel like a burden rather than something that was exciting or inspiring. So working down through my stash, I hope will have like a de-stressing effect on me. And then finally, the final kind of motivation around this, or the thing that I'm hoping will sustain me, is what I'm thinking of as kind of an ethical position. I've been thinking a lot about ideas of overconsumption in general. I've started reading, and I'm not very far in, so I can't really speak to the book that much, but I've started reading a book called Consumed by Ailsa Barber, and which talks about you know, the ethics of overconsumption in the fashion industry and fast fashion, and the impact that has on the planet and garment workers and between nations. Like I'm really fascinated to keep reading. It's something that I'm very interested in, the idea of ethical and slow fashion and reducing our need to constantly be buying. It's something I'm really bad at. I buy a lot and I want to be better and more thoughtful about. So I've been thinking about that in this other realm of, you know, mainstream fashion. And although the concerns or ethics are different in buying craft supplies, I think for me, at any rate, there's a similar impulse to buy for the sake of buying. And I'm really interested in examining that impulse in myself and looking at that consumption pattern and maybe kind of breaking some bad habits that I have around consumption. So anyway, that's you know, that's just personal for me and something that's going to be helping sustain me during my no buy. But everyone has a different approach, and I'm not here to tell you how you should think about it, but just sharing a little bit about how I'm thinking about that at the moment. Also within stash and my stash goals and trying to use what I have, I'd really like to make some scrappy projects this year. So using up some odds and ends, making some things that just use up those little bits that accumulate in everyone's knitting life, I think. I've got some ideas of things I might do. I've been looking at the Bohemian Scrapsody, which is a cardigan. I do have on my needles, and this goes back to the looking at unfinished projects, I have a scrappy blanket on the needles, which maybe I will pick up again and keep working on. So yeah, those are some possible scrappy projects, but I just, in that spirit of using up what I have, I'd like to find some projects that do that. My next category was other crafts. So this is, I'm primarily a knitter. That's mostly what I do. But I do have some other crafts I enjoy picking up from time to time. So I like sewing. I don't do it very often, but I do like it when I do, and I like the finished objects I get from it. And I actually have some fabric in my fabric stash and some patterns that I bought last year that I was really gung-ho about making and then just didn't get to. So I'm hoping to make some of those patterns this year and try and improve my skills as a sewist. I'm very much a beginner at sewing, but it is something that I would like to work more at. And then also, I've been really drawn to the idea of trying to improve my crochet skills. Again, I can do the very basics of crochet. I have in the past made a granny square kind of level of crochet. I know how to chain, but nothing extensive. And I would really like to get better at this other related skill to knitting. And I love projects that combine some crochet with some knitting. Like, you know, when you see like a crochet border on a cardigan, or you know, there's lots of different ways that people incorporate both. And I'm really fascinated by that, and I'm really drawn to that. I literally just saw someone talking about the Ariana cardigan by Amy Christophers, which is a granny square cardigan. And I think there's also the Jericho cardigan is another one that I've seen that's very similar, this idea of the granny square cardigan. And I was wondering if that might be a good project to encourage me to practice my crochet skills. I don't know. If you have any suggestions of places to start for a fairly novice crocheter, let me know. I was also thinking a crochet project could be a stash busting project, so combining a couple of goals there. So yeah, pick up my hooks again and see if I can make something happen with crochet. Okay, and then my final area of goals is community. I think with this one, I sometimes find it's really hard to connect with other people. I'm a fairly shy person. I'm mostly just busy with my kid, and it's hard to meet other people. But I do really want to connect with more people around this hobby. It's a huge part of my life, and I'd really like to feel more connected to other makers. So part of that is this channel and engaging here and chatting to folks here. So thank you for being here and leaving comments if you do. It means so much to me because, yeah, it's something that I really long for, is more community, and something that I struggle with knowing how to get involved in. So I appreciate it if you're here. And then the other part of community is I want to try and maybe go to a knit night in this coming year. So there is a knitting circle at my local yarn shop, I think on a weekly basis, so I could try go along to that. A long time ago, I used to regularly go to a knitting group that met in a pub in downtown Toronto. I'm not even sure if they're still running, and if they are, it's kind of out of the way of where I live these days, but maybe there's something else similar. So I want to explore the idea of finding a knit night, an in-person thing, and connecting with more people around this craft that I love doing. So that one actually feels like kind of the most scary and vulnerable goal. But I think it would be really rewarding if I managed to push myself to connect a little bit more with people. So yeah, that is all of them. Those are all of my goals. I feel pretty excited about them. I'm looking forward to seeing what the year will bring. Are you making any knitting goals this year? Is there anything that you share on your list with my list, or anything you think I should consider adding to my list? I'd love to know. I'd love to hear from you down below if there's anything you're working on that's the same as mine, or anything different that you're planning to do. Please share it. I'd love to hear. And otherwise, that is it for today. A shortish one, I hope. But I hope you enjoyed this. Feel free to give me a like if you did. And if you'd like to see future videos, see how I get on with these goals, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, and then you'll find my new videos whenever they come out. All right, take care, everyone, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.